You're watching or listening to Redwood Wonk. We have a special guest this week, Aaron Donaldson. My name is Eric Kirk. Aaron, of course, is a professor at it's Cal Poly now, I guess.
Yep.
And but we've got national news of the day. We're going to start off with the question: does Trump have the Republican nomination in the bag? DeSantis is floundering. He's sinking in the polls. There's nobody else that, Haley or any of the others who are even getting above 5%. Maybe Pence gets between 5 and 10%. But there's doesn't seem to be any way to stop him. Partly, I think there's a number of reasons. One is DeSantis is really showing that he's less effective in national politics than he is in Florida politics, where apparently he's effective as anything. But he's had a few things come up. Disney outplayed him, and in a real interesting legal maneuver. But he's shown himself to be very amateurish in foreign policy. He there's this whole thing about eating pudding with fingers that Trump is taking advantage of, and I one thing after another, and I actually think that the book burning situation is catching up to him. It's extreme. There's too many stories down there about books that are being put on the list to be checked for no reason at all. I mean, for no apparent reason at all. So with him failing, and meanwhile, because of the charges against Trump, both already announced and pending, there seems to be a necessity of the Republican Party circling the wagons on his behalf, and people who were leaning towards DeSantis are now leaning towards Trump. Are actually endorsing Trump. He's picked up some major endorsements, and that's where the Republican electorate is. They can't win without the Trump voters. The question is, can they win with them? So a lot to unpack in there, but I'd like to, by the end of the show, be able to say whether or not Trump has it wrapped up. It's very early. Things can happen. These prosecutions could evolve to a point where even some of his hardcore followers have to start questioning it. But but they're already willing to believe outlandish things on his behalf. Republicans won't stand up to him. Mitch McConnell's just dead silent on the matter, that he's playing strategy. But Asa Hutchinson is trying to come in as the reasonable Republican and maybe trying to step into DeSantis's place, but he's not getting any traction so far. Again, we're about 8 months before the first primary, but there are some pundits who say there's nothing to stop the Trump train. Aaron, what do you have to say?
So I think that the Republicans are really stuck because you yourself have mentioned some of the people that could potentially be running against Donald Trump. The front runner, obviously on everyone's mind right now, is Ron DeSantis. He has not declared he's running for president. He's
Right.
doing a book tour, but he's not running yet. Like, we think he's running. We're pretty sure he's running, but he has not said that he's running. Former Vice President Pence is in a similar boat where people think that this is someone that is a potential candidate. You did mention Governor Hutchinson. Obviously, Nikki Haley is a name that's on this list. Apparently, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is an activist against environmental and social corporate government initiatives, announced his candidacy on Tucker Carlson tonight in February 21st. The problem is that no one has heard of any of those people.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump has spent literally decades building a brand, and it's a brand that his father built, and it's a brand that he inherited and that he's really, really developed. And when it comes to one vote win all kind of primary politics, that is formidable. And that was one of the reasons that he was so compelling as a candidate when he ran the first time. And now they're really stuck with the fact that they have built nobody else. They have like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's not running for president. Like, who are the other, like, who is the other most famous national Republican that's not Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump?
Mitch
There's nobody
McConnell.
there. Yeah.
Mitch,
Is he running for president?
no.
No.
And McCarthy.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And he could barely manage to like squeak together a coalition to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And when it comes to, you know, beating someone like, I think the other problem that we have, number one, the first problem is that nobody knows who any of these other people are. And
Except DeSantis, they do know who he is.
They do know who DeSantis is, and we can talk about him more, and I think we should. But the other problem that we have is that this is an individual, Donald Trump, who will not give up. He will not. He has proven this. He can lose an election by very large margins, and his go-to will be that it was stolen from me. And if the Republicans think that that is unique to just his stance on the Democrats, they've got another thing coming. I think it would be very fascinating to see if he would concede a Republican primary when he has not conceded a national presidential election.
And let's be clear, he cares nothing about the Republican Party unless it's to his use, unless it's his asset.
How long has he been a Republican national entity when it comes to those other names that we're naming, as far as like Mitch McConnell and McCarthy? These people have been around for decades. And Donald Trump, like, he's been around for decades, but as a Republican politician, this is new ground for him that, you know, he built it back in the 90s and everything, but he just became president. And so I think
but it's slash and burn, because he's going to see his primary opponent is probably DeSantis. He's willing to make it so that he can't be elected. You know, even if DeSantis comes out and wins the primary, he's going to viciously attack him so much that a lot of Trump voters will probably just sit out the election. That's the dilemma that the Republicans have. They can't win with him. They can't win without him.
Loyalty is everything to former President Trump. And if the Republican Party thinks that they can overcome that, like, I think that that's very idealistic. So when it comes to Ron DeSantis, I think that the big problem that Ron DeSantis has is that he's just not aggressive enough. He needs to be like his little half comment about how Donald Trump is dealing with payments to, you know, former adult film stars. It's weak sauce, frankly. There's nothing to it. And Donald Trump he goes for the nose. He'll gouge your eye. He'll take your nose. He's going to fight as dirty as possible. And for reasons that I really can't explain, the Republican electorate seems to really, really like go for that. That's the brand right now. I mean, that is the kind of national brand that we see as far as Marjorie Taylor Greene's performances in the committees and things. It's no holds barred. And DeSantis is too buttoned up.
Right. DeSantis attacked him initially on the prosecution, but then once the prosecution happened and all the Republicans were lining up to defend Trump, he just meekly went along with it.
It's really fascinating because with Donald Trump, like, you're facing an indictment currently, and obviously the Republicans have decided that this indictment, they're going to say, is just more of the proverbial witch hunt. But it's not like just raining; it's about to hail. It is going to hail indictments on Donald Trump, and the ones that are coming are going to be substantial. And I think that it's what is genuinely fascinating to me is that we have not seen the Republicans go on offense against Donald Trump yet. And I wonder why. Because when it comes to these classic Republican thinkers, Mitch McConnell, Dick Cheney, all these other people, like, Donald Trump destroyed Dick Cheney's daughter, Liz Cheney, like, in public. And for some reason, the Republican Party has not been able to use every weapon that they've ever used against this individual. And I'm really fascinated by that. I wonder why that is.
Well, I think the main
reason locked up this early. Go ahead.
I think the main reason is in my opinion, after looking at it, one of the reasons the polls fail in Trump elections is because there's a significant amount of Trump supporters who do not fit the likely voter models. They're not considered, so they aren't counted because even when they try to adjust likely voters, there are people who come out of the woodwork to vote for Trump. The problem the Republicans have is they need those people to come out. Not just they're not worried that those people are going to vote for the Democrat. They need them to turn out. because in the off-year elections, the Republicans aren't doing as well as they should be doing because he's not on the ballot. And there are just some people who will only bother to come to vote if he's on the ballot. It's not a huge number. It just has to be 5% of the Republicans, people who will vote Republican, but that's enough to cost the election. I mean, in 2020, he actually increased his vote with every group except for white people. I mean, he increased his support with LGBTQ, with Jewish voters, with Black voters, with Asian and Latino voters, and the only one he didn't increase was Native American, but that's a whole different story. But the problem with that is it's not like people, African Americans and LGBTQ people, were switching their vote from Democrat to Republican. It's just people who normally don't vote came in to vote for him because they were moved by his machismo or whatever. But it's or standing up to the powers that be as if he's not part of the powers that be. I mean, it's just but that's it. The Republicans have been sliding. They are less of a majority all the time. The Democratic constituencies are increasing. They need that vote to come out, but they can't seem to duplicate it. They can't seem to duplicate the Trump effect without Trump. I think that's the main reason.
No, it's absolutely right. I think that when it comes to Trump's chances in the general election, if he were not running against a candidate as weak as Joe Biden, the alarm bells would be much louder for the Republicans because he is facing an uphill battle with moderates. He's not winning moderates with indictments. He's not winning Democrats with indictments. He might be increasing his numbers in these demographics that you're mentioning, but I absolutely agree with you. He's pulling people like conventional non-voters. These are people who typically would not vote, who are like, that's my guy because he's burning the system down. And so they show up, and that's not a swing vote. You're not pulling votes from the other person in that capacity. And that's a big liability for them. And I think there's a whole other chapter of this, which is about whether or not, Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump. He's already done it once. He's
already done it once. I mean, my view of that is that Biden is unpopular right now because the price of meat is high. If the price of meat drops, he will win, or he'll get another 5% in approval ratings. I mean, it'll go.
He's hardly a sparkling candidate. Like when it comes to Joe Biden's charisma and things, when it comes to his ability to stay on message, when it comes to his abilities to win young people. I mean, we were on the cusp of electing the first woman president of the United States, and what we got instead was Joe Biden. And I think that there's a reason that a bunch of Democrats are pretty disappointed about that. But the existential threat that is Donald Trump, compounded by the fact that he can be facing indictments and the Republican Party will nominate him for president, I feel like that alone is enough for Democrats to be like, I'm a Joe Biden fan. I had no idea.
Biden hasn't declared yet.
I know.
That's the whole thing.
That is interesting. That is very interesting.
And Ro Khanna is actually going to a key New Hampshire meeting, dinner or something where candidates normally go at this time. He's the only one, I think. Besides, I don't even know if Biden is going to it, but he might run and just be the left-wing standard bearer that gets beaten 75 to 25% or whatever, or maybe more. And the rest, and that could actually strengthen Biden.
I worry about a newcomer versus Donald Trump. I mean, people are talking about Gavin Newsom. I think they squandered their opportunity with Vice President Harris, and that's not surprising at all. But with Joe Biden, the only reason I'm a big fan is because he is the incumbent, and there is a statistical bump that comes along with that's significant. And if it's some new person that Americans have to learn their name and who they are against Donald J. Trump, with the kind of winner-take-all margins that we have in this country, I'm worried about that race. I think that could be hotter and closer than people would want it to be.
Well, definitely. Now, of course, as you said, Biden has already beaten him. I mean, he knows how to win.
By a lot.
Yeah, and he knows how to win debates. Biden does without winning them. I mean,
Yeah.
he just let Trump interrupt him and said, will you shut up, man? And that became the, Reagan, there you go again moment, so it's,
I appreciate
he knew
that.
that, and then called him a clown, said, I can't get a word in with this clown. And so he didn't have to perform even. All he had to do was have a few, smart comments like that, and he was perceived as the winner. And of course, perception is everything. So it just nobody will remember anything else about that debate except that Trump just kept interrupting and interrupting and interrupting, and Biden had a couple of smart aleck remarks that just did well. He knows how to do that. He's a master at that. And so I won't say he's a weak candidate, but if the economy the economy isn't even all that bad, really. But if the economy doesn't improve according to perception, and by perception that means inflation, that is a bigger deal to people than unemployment, unfortunately. If inflation is not tamed, or we go into a recession, Biden is going to have a hard time, and he needs to not run at that point. I mean, we talk about candidates coming out of the woodwork. Everybody talks about Gavin Newsom. I think the one who would have the best chance against him if Biden doesn't run is Governor Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer. She is a powerhouse, and has actually, her politics in Michigan, she's done really well by it, and that's a state that you need to take.
A swing state. Yep.
Yeah, so you'd probably take the whole Midwest, and that's all the Democrats need. So, but I'm going to let you close it out. We got about a minute left.
Just personally, when it comes to the debates, I think that Hillary Clinton completely creamed Donald Trump in those debates. But at that point in time, Americans were not familiar with exactly how terrible of a president Donald Trump would be. Right. It was still this idea that somehow a billionaire could drain the swamp, and that is ludicrous on face. But up until that point, we didn't really know. And after 4 years of a Trump presidency, the American public decided that literally, like anyone, Joe Biden is better than Donald Trump. Yeah. And I don't think he's gone backward in any capacity. Trump definitely has. And so I worry about a new name, but I think that if they do run with Biden, it'll be closer than Democrats want it to be.
All right. Well, my view, Clinton actually did improve in the polls after the debates, but the Comey stunt did her in. So, but I think we agree it will be Trump and probably Biden again.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Tonight I stand before you, tested by adversity, made sensitive by hardship, a fighter by principle, and the most optimistic man in America.
I didn't make it in life because of my athletic prowess. I didn't make it because I'm a genius. I made it because I worked hard.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know. It is the latter category that tend to be the difficult ones.
When I hear your new ideas, I'm reminded of that ad. Where's the beef? Yeah.
And the client asks you a question. How do you guys get comfortable? It's a question. So, what was your answer?
Mr. Chairman,
did you tell him?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to understand.
No, I think you understand it. I don't think you want.
Next topic. Feinstein creating a dilemma for Democrats who want to respect the years of her legacy, but she's sort of pulling a Ruth Bader Ginsburg, refusing to resign when she's been in hearings where she asks the same question over and over again. Sometimes she's there and sometimes she isn't. A poll came out today, 2/3 want her to resign, but she's having health issues with shingles right now, says she'll be back in a few weeks. And this is a real crucial time because she's now made it so the Democrats don't have a majority in the Judiciary Committee. The Republicans thwarted an attempt to replace her temporarily with some parliamentary tactics that is too esoteric for me to understand. But So the pressure is to get her to resign so that the Democrats can officially put somebody on the Senate Judiciary Committee, because they don't know if they're going to win the election in 2024 or hold on to the Senate. So they need to get in as many judges as they can. and they've got a lot of vacancies and a lot to do, and they've been muscling them through with their 51 majority. They've been approving a bunch of them, but that stops now until Feinstein is back in there or until she's replaced. A lot of pressure on her to resign. Initially did it because certain candidates just decided to go ahead and run without her permission. Ro Khanna, as I talked about him in the last segment, is actively calling for her replacement because if she is replaced, Gavin Newsom, governor, has pledged to make the next replacement a black woman, and Barbara Lee is the only declared candidate. Ro Khanna is, of course, co-chair of her campaign. He definitely wants to see that. Barbara Lee, of course, is on the far left of the Democratic caucus. She represents Berkeley and Oakland, Alameda County, for the most part, and but the Democrats are stuck because they they have all this respect for her. She came into politics. She was a city council person, was going to retire from politics, and then Moscone and Harvey Milk were assassinated. So she got appointed mayor somehow, and that just made her career. And she was mayor of San Francisco, and then ran for governor, failed at that, but then was elected in 1992 in the Democratic wave, along with Barbara Boxer. They called them Thelma and Louise, but she's always been more on the more conservative end of Democratic politics. She's definitely, it's not speaking for the majority of the California state in terms of her political brand, and she's not able to perform her functions, and yet she's resisting resigning, and most of the big name Democrats are afraid to call for her resignation, but they're losing opportunities every day to get more judges appointed before they possibly lose the ability to do that in a year and a half.
I think that's really the point. Hit the nose, like the nail on the head, as it were, which is that, like, when it comes to the Judiciary Committee, their job is to approve judges, and there are a lot of them. Donald Trump appointed like 200 Article 3 judges or something like that, and it's a boat race. One of the things that the conservatives were very explicit about, that they were not only prioritizing prior to Trump's election, but satisfied with after the fact. They don't like Donald Trump's vocabulary. They don't like his burn everything to the ground politics. That's not your typical Mitch McConnell style. But what Mitch McConnell loves is the judges that Donald Trump was able to appoint to so many key places, because these are the people that can just totally out of the blue decide that an abortion pill that is completely safe should be very inaccessible to a whole bunch of Americans and require the Supreme Court to weigh in on it. You can appoint people into places where they can take this ideology of Trumpism, which is regardless of whether we are Democratic, we are right, and we're going to implement our will on as a law of the land. Like, that was the whole point of the Trump administration's judge appointment policy, which was aggressive. And the Democrats now are trying to make up ground, and they have a lot of ground to make up. And everyone wants to respect Feinstein. Like, she is an icon in a lot of ways. She's done a lot of incredible things, and I think everybody really does want to emphasize the value of her legacy. But that right now means very little when it comes to what we just talked about, which is a precarious presidential election. Donald Trump could be president again. Nobody wants to believe that that is possible. But we just said Biden's not the strongest candidate, and there's nobody waiting in the wings for the Democrats either that people are really excited to vote for.
But even if he's not, there's also a strong likelihood that the Republicans will retake the Senate. So either way, they would lose their ability to. I mean, they would get some things through, some judges through, because the Republicans couldn't block them all, but the ability would be greatly reduced then from now.
And by and large, I am in favor of folks like Feinstein staying in office as long as possible. I think that what a lot of voters neglect is that people like Dianne Feinstein surround themselves with a staff, and that staff runs a huge percentage of the decisions and the politics and the rhetoric that a lot of people associate with the individual. One of the things that surprises too many people is how few of the words politicians say are words that they in fact write. They spend a lot of time reading words that people get paid a lot of money to write, and that is, because they're they're kind of a node, a hub of a wheel, if you will, and the spokes of that wheel are what create the strength. And when you have someone like Dianne Feinstein, you got a strong wheel. Like, that is a beefy wheel, and I can understand why people would be hesitant to take her out, even though, she may be asking the same questions more than once in committee hearings. And all that is stuff we can overlook. But when it comes to judges serving time on the bench and making decisions today that matter for people, it's a big backslide right now. I mean, the Roe v. Wade overturn, the stuff that we're seeing right now, I think is just the beginning. And this is a party that's emboldened. So I think the Democrats are right that this is a really key time to push on this. The question is, what do they do? Like, what's possible? What can they possibly do?
There's not much they can do. I mean, if they call for her resignation and she refuses, it's not good. Yeah, and if she does, it looks like she's been pushed out.
Yep.
I mean, they've got to, have it. It really would have to come from her heart to do that. But and hopefully she recovers from shingles and is back in there to do the job. But she's on possibly one of the most important committees right now.
Absolutely.
It's real hard, and yeah, every day is a lost opportunity. I mean, they've gotten a lot through. They actually set a record of judges in the first term, or at least, first couple of years of the first term anyway. And they, but there's a lot more vacant spots, and the Republicans are going to do everything to drag their feet. And if Democrats don't have that extra vote, it makes it harder to get stuff to, candidates to the floor.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to say is that you pointed out the Republicans are delaying the Democrats' efforts to replace Dianne Feinstein. And when the Republicans are delaying the Democrat effort to replace Dianne Feinstein, it is time for her to retire. Because, like she has been a thorn in their side for so long. She has been a buzzword for them. They've tried always just associating liberal politics to her, which is just not, as you said, her brand at all. It doesn't stick. They've done everything they can to get rid of her. And now what they realize is because she is absent, she cannot vote. And if she cannot vote, that majority disappears. And if the majority disappears, so do those Democratic judges. And so suddenly the Republicans are Team Feinstein. And that, to me, that's indicative. That's a good indication of where, the situation's at.
It's real hard. They've got several candidates. The candidates are all staying quiet. The candidates to replace her, and that's probably smart on their part. They don't want to look like vultures or anything, although I think two of them will be very upset if she resigns early, because Barbara Lee, if she's in there for half a year, that gives her the incumbency status and gives her a bigger advantage than she might already have. So it's just right now I think she's in third in the polls. I'm not sure, but as to how extensive that is or how much those polls mean at this point, but it does look like it's down to those three. And the judicial situation is really important. Clarence Thomas has come up. It turns out he's completely corrupt, but there's certainly not going to be an impeachment coming from the House for it. But I mean, he's he's not even trying to hide it anymore, and he's
he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to.
He doesn't, and so you've got this possibility though. He's probably going to be the next conservative retire. He's the oldest, I believe, or die in office or die in the position, like a lot of them tend to do. But it's they've got this situation where the Democrats right now, where the progressives are down to three. They really need to pick that up. But they really need to pick that up. And if they can pick up another spot, and then Roberts and Kavanaugh are swing votes on anything, it makes things possible. Now, with this abortion ruling, Justice Alito actually signed an extension of the stay on the abortion pill ruling. That's a pretty good indication that this ruling is too much even for the conservatives on the court. Yeah, we'll see, but that's because that to extend it rather than say no, we'll hear it later is that's usually a step in that direction. But again, you're right. We'll see.
Are you? This is maybe off topic, but are you familiar of situations where you see challenges coming from within the party of the court? Like, I think it's interesting that we could potentially see a whole bunch of these kind of Trump-appointed judges offering up very radical proposals to a Supreme Court that, as conservative as it is, might be like, we don't want to go that far. Like
Right.
that to me seems like potentially the future, and that could be fairly new. Am I overstating that?
It may very well be, and it puts them in a tough spot because their ruling last year is probably what cost the Republicans the Senate and a larger majority in the House. So
And the
it's
perception of the court is at a record low. Roberts is very aware of the fact that the American public thinks the Supreme Court is a sham. And so if they vote for like Trumpist, like radical policies like this, they just
that
pour
would be it.
fuel on
Yeah.
that fire. Yeah, absolutely. So there has to be a pivot at some point. It's not coming from Amy Coney Barrett or Justice Kavanaugh, I'll tell you that much. So it's going to have to come from some of those other folks. It's interesting.
Yeah. No, and it's having repercussions all over the place. I just learned of a local woman healthcare professional. I don't want to say specifically what because I don't want to dox her by accident, but she came from Alabama because she says if she stayed in Alabama, she would probably be prosecuted for breaking the law ban on advising on abortion. So here she is in California. We're benefiting. We need healthcare professionals in Humboldt County, right? So we're benefiting from that. But this is what's happening. Women are leaving those places. So it's going to have repercussions all over the place. But again, getting back to the Feinstein thing, this is exactly why we need judges in there, because first of all, overwhelm the Supreme Court with decisions that they have to overturn. They can only hear at most about 150 cases a year, so they can't overturn or affirm everything that goes up there. They've got to pick and choose, and they probably are right now wishing they could have, if there was an appellate court ruling that wouldn't have affirmed it, that they could just overturn right now or just ignore right now by not granting certiorari. But anyway, we've got the politics are profound on this, and I just hope Feinstein recovers from shingles. That can kill people, by the way. Shingles is a very serious thing. It's a serious disease. It's not the chicken pox. It's a follow-up to it that can be very deadly to older people.
And it is difficult for Democrats because Dianne Feinstein has been such a staple of the party for so long, and she's done so many important things in her time in office. And I think that she is kind of reflective of a moderate Democrat party that is on the way out, and that a lot of people are kind of a little burnt out with. And that's something that she's dealt with for a very long time. When it comes to like her ability to be a candidate, her ability to vote, her ability to stump for key Democrat issues, there I feel like she can come back from shingles, she can go right back to work, and she can do all of that stuff. That's possible. Sure. It really does boil down, we said at the very top of this segment, it boils down to her ability to show up to those committee hearings on the Judiciary Committee and to vote for those judges. Because, as I said, the metaphor is it's a boat race. And in a boat race, the second hand is heavy. That thing weighs a lot. It goes slow, and every tick can cost you major decisions that have huge impacts on the life of women of all ages. Really, right now are feeling this. I'm hearing this from college students that decided to go to college in California because they thought that they would have health care if they got pregnant. That's why they came to college in California. Like, that's not pedagogy, but it is a legacy of a very drastic Republican Party right now that makes the Judiciary Committee, kind of ground zero in a lot of ways.
In private, you wouldn't expect Lachlan Murdoch, the CEO of Fox, to be a Trump critic, but apparently he is denouncing or has denounced the former president in fairly harsh terms this year. He has even gone as far as to say that if the former president were to run again for that office, that he believes it would be damaging to the country. Now, that said, Lachlan Murdoch in private has also stressed that the Fox News audience still remains largely supportive of the former president. So I think he knows that he might have his own personal feelings regarding Trump, but that the Fox audience, if the channel were to overtly become critical of the former president, they might dump the channel and flee somewhere else. And we've seen that in the past, after the 2020 election, and a sizable number of viewers left Fox for those other right-wing channels. Change its tone on Trump, it would be a very bad business decision. But Lachlan Murdoch in private seems to be pretty critical of the former president.
Well, we come to the big news of the week, the Dominion Fox settlement. 700 and close to 800 million, I think $775.5 million. About a little under half of what Dominion was asking for defamation. They were asking for 1.6 million. They got this. A lot of people are kind of disappointed that Dominion settled, but Dominion is a business. This is a big deal to them. They've lost at least one contract we know of in Shasta County. We don't know if they've been deprived of others, so they need to make money for their shareholders and keep their employees employed. They are, of course, one of their primary businesses is voting machines, and they were attacked as being part of a Chinese-Venezuelan conspiracy to flip the votes for Biden. And this lawsuit came about. I'm a real study of First Amendment history in the United States, and New York Times versus Sullivan is an incredible case. It made so that the press can be aggressive in this country. It basically establishes that you need, if you're a public figure or you're talking about a major issue of major public importance, it's not enough that the newspaper was merely negligent in posting falsehoods. You got to show malice, which is either actual knowledge or a reckless disregard for the truth. Well, you have email after email of the staff and figures of Fox admitting that they knew they were putting people on who were lying. And we've talked about it on the show. I'm not going to go through the whole case, but scholars everywhere have been saying this is about the most clear-cut case for malice they've ever seen in a defamation case against a media source. So, but it's a lot of money. It's more than 2 times the net profit of Fox makes in a year. So this is not insignificant to them, and they're facing shareholder lawsuits because of this. It means that shareholders are not going to be receiving dividends for a long time because any money they make that goes over and above is going to, their gross is going to have to go to finance this this judgment, depending on what they can negotiate for a payment plan. But that's a big thing. That if they have too low payments, I'm sure the Dominion is going to want 10% interest. So Fox is in a financial jam here. It won't do them in. They will weather it. They have multi-billion dollars. They're worth more. But again, their net profit is only between 300 and 400 million a year. On the lower side of that. And whereas, this is a big deal for Dominion because they make about 100 billion a year. This is like 7 times what they make. So this will cover their damages. A lot of people disappointed in Dominion for settling because they really wanted to see the defendants, all of them floundering in court, being cross-examined and having to explain what they meant in their emails and getting Murdoch up there. And people were, and plus, some of us were just looking forward to it for the entertainment value. I'm sorry, Schadenfreude, I guess. But it settled in the last hour. Some secret mediator came in and made the point, and they settled it without Fox having to admit on the air that they defamed Dominion. So Fox will probably continue to get away with it. They'll play the victim, and they'll probably continue doing what they're doing. Maybe not quite to the extent that they did it at this time, but they'll continue doing what they're doing. They'll defame people, but they also are facing a lawsuit from Smartmatic, who are asking for $2.7 billion, more than Dominion was asking for. They, of course, have also sued Newsmax and OAN, neither of whom could survive a judgment like this one. They got to be sweating right now because if they get a judgment for this, that Newsmax and OAN will go under. Period. End of story. So it's but Fox problem maybe could weather another one. But the Smartmatic claims it has even more information that's going to be explosive. And so that lawsuit is still pending. We'll see what happens. But a little bit of mixed news. I don't think Fox will forget this. I don't think that they'll ever be quite as blatant where they just have night after night after night of publishing lies without offering an opportunity to rebuttal because they knew that the Fox viewers would be angry that they aired that and lose them again. So there's a lot to talk about here. Aaron, this is kind of your area.
I was so curious to hear what you had to say as a First Amendment person, because it is so significant. And I think that one of the reasons people really wanted to see it go to trial is definitely that delicious moment of seeing like folks like Tucker Carlson have to go on air and apologize that we're not going to get. But it's more than that. Like, Tucker Carlson is a major opinion maker. Fox News is becoming less and less relevant. Like, AM radio, podcasting, the mediascape of the right is fracturing, and Fox News knows this. And this is why they were so paranoid in the first time to like say the true thing as opposed to like alienating their viewers. And I think that the reason that folks were so disappointed is because that this was, as you said, one of the most significant tests of the limits that the media can go to without accountability. And what did we learn? You buy your way out. You buy your way out. The Dominion folks are happy. I've never seen people more happy. The picture of them coming out of the courtroom on the day that they won looked like people who are about to get paid. And that is exactly what's going to happen. But when it comes to First Amendment people, what we learned is that you can absolutely lie, knowingly lie, as a news organization, and that you'll get slapped with a very, very large settlement. But when you look at the folks that own them, News Corp is the company, like the parent company. They're worth $10 billion a year. Like, that's a $700 million settlement. If you make $10 billion a year, is still huge. I don't want to dismiss that as insignificant. But one of the reasons that this is an effective solution that defendants will literally buy into is because it is an affordable way to get them off the hook. You're way more optimistic than I am. I think folks like Tucker Carlson are absolutely going to double down, because that's what happened the last time he was, charged with stuff that was not true and got let off the hook because he was an opinion maker. And so now what we've learned is that the actual news mouths of Fox can lie, and they will, and that will be their primary profit motive, and that there's no accountability besides a couple $100 million. And that sounds like a lot of money, but if you only do it every 4 years for a presidential election, and Tucker Carlson is as profitable as he is every single night, I feel like it's at least a push.
Sure, but
losing those viewers in the first moment versus this moment here, that is itself is enough to potentially offset it, let alone what you earn by not having any kind of accountability whatsoever and just continuing business as usual going forward.
Yeah, but also now you're going to have lawyers and companies willing to sue Fox, because maybe they'll get a check on this. They can't afford that much. I mean, this is big. They can weather this. But again, they're worth $10 billion, but their net, that's their gross and what they bring in. Their net is not anywhere near as high. So basically, for 2 years, they're not making a profit. It's just
a huge corporation. And as you said, Fox News is a little tiny piece of that big corporation that is suddenly way more expensive than it ever was before. And that's not good if you're the person at News Corp. And you are right. I think that the question is this a single stream coming through the dam that, portends of a lot more to come? Or is this it? I feel like Fox News is looking at hail in the future. It's going to
And there's a couple of other reasons I'm optimistic. Now, first of all, Dominion, they're a business. They're not a crusading outfit. They were damaged by what was done badly, and this has given them.
They got paid.
They got paid, and also everybody knows that Fox lies other than the true believers. And
this is not news.
Right. So it's but I think that there are now shareholder lawsuits saying we're not going to be getting dividends for the next couple of years. And if News Corp goes to bail Fox out by paying it off, then those shareholders can sue. So they've got a problem. And now there's probably lawyers that are going back watching Fox, to see if there are other lawsuits that they can file. I mean, there's they looking at it, and again, we've got the Smartmatic one coming up. So it's just, they're not in the clear. This was good. They could not agree to the apology, because if they agreed and said we lied, Smartmatic just goes in with a summary judgment motion, said they've already admitted it. That's why they had to. That's why they had to say it. And Smartmatic's attorneys sound like they're just as aggressive. They're going to use everything we've had, and they claim they've got other stuff that we're going to learn. So, we'll see. But definitely, Fox will not. Their people will not be stupid enough to say things in email anymore. They've learned that lesson. They think they just thought they were so untouchable that the email couldn't get them, but they couldn't hide it. They hid some footage of Giuliani talking to one of their now estranged producers, and she produced it, and it all of a sudden Fox News got caught. Whoever signed the verification for their discovery perjured themselves, because there was stuff that was not turned over in discovery, including that everybody's wondering how much more, and they had a special person in there to go through all of Fox's computers to see if they can find more. Fox had to settle this. They had no choice. They had to settle it, and they are taking a risk too, because we don't know quite how Fox viewers are going to respond to this. They're on the forums right now. You go on the Facebook forums trying to defend Fox in every way, saying, "Oh, they didn't admit anything. This is a nuisance settlement." No way. $800 million is a nuisance settlement. It's 50 million maybe, but even that. I mean, it's just so they don't appreciate having to do the impossible defense of them on social media. Some of them are going to say, you know what, Fox is weak. I'm going to watch Newsmax now. I'm going to watch OAN, and I'm going to read Breitbart. Well, they don't read, but watch Breitbart videos or whatever. They may be done with Fox. So we'll see. We don't know what the damage is to Fox, but we do know that now lawyers know they're willing to write checks.
It'll be interesting to see if there's a lot of turnover at Fox. I mean, at one point, Bill O'Reilly seemed like he would be there forever, and now people just do not know who this person is. And we could say the same thing about Glenn Beck. And I feel like that a lot of the faces now at Fox News seem like they are just totally invincible. But this is a pretty expensive day out, and it's only going to get more expensive. And just, again, to emphasize, like News Corp is a huge organization, and they don't want to spend this much money on Fox News. Like, they've got lots of other things that they could be spending their money on as opposed to this. So I think that, if there is turnover there, it wouldn't surprise me. But personally, I'm not convinced that folks like Sean Hannity or Lauren Ingraham, the news is predicated on the idea that the truth comes to light. So ultimately, being faced with their own text messages that's like Donald Trump is a terrible idea should not be surprising to news people, because that is ultimately the way the news works, is that you understand that things like legal systems can bring personal communications to light, and so the truth comes to light. So if you're lying and you're making news, that's just not good for your brand, but that's never dissuaded them in the past. And it doesn't dissuade the Fox News viewer. Their fealty is not to the truth. Fox News viewers are more likely to be misinformed than the average public. That is provable. Their fealty is to the brand and to this kind of counter-attitudinal stance. And they're getting that from OAN. They're getting that from Newsmax. They're getting that from Charlie Kirk in ways that Fox News is just not going to be able to deliver. So it's either change the faces of the brand or, lose a lot of those listeners to folks that just won't really question the things that they say.
Now, I do need to say that there are actually some First Amendment scholars and advocates who are a little bit relieved here, because they're worried about the New York Times standard being weakened. Trump has already said he wants to ignore it, right? He wants to overturn it. So this is, it's interesting that they were hiding behind it. So we're a little bit concerned about that, and now it's a settlement. But then there are other people in the media who are like saying, I think one comparison I saw was that it was like the officers who are resentful of the cops who shoot people without it, because that makes it more dangerous for them. And so they're worried that if Fox had lost, there would be more lawsuits across the board against all media. and then the precedent would be cited over and over and over again, and possibly whittle down the power of New York Times versus Sullivan. So, it's just and so they're resentful, but they also thought that maybe Fox needed to be nailed so you didn't have those cops doing that, making them dangerous for everybody else. It's a really tricky situation, but Fox News has basically put the protection of it in jeopardy, because I can see even some moderate people saying, yeah, maybe we have too much free speech in this country, or freedom of the press.
It's such a good point. I feel like Donald Trump has, made a masterclass out of whiplash. And when it comes to defamation, he's front and center when it comes to just wanting to sue the pants off of all the media that's like reporting the truth. And that's a huge risk. And when it comes to like the pre-existing risks, the risk of censoring the media for saying the quiet part out loud, I think, is large. I think you're seeing people like banning books and banning curriculum and doing, saying that the New York Times is a liberal media source when it's, pretty moderate, if not somewhat conservative, frankly, as far as the global standard is concerned. Like, if their whole approach is to just dismiss all of that, and to say that none of that is even, worth anything at all, then that's like a climate where we should worry about that kind of censorship coming down. Whereas on the other side, as you just said, this would be like a once in a generation case where it's like you cannot call yourselves news and knowingly lie about a stolen election in a way that leads to an insurgent attack on the Capitol. Like, that to me seems very straightforward, and maybe we need that precedent to be set. But there's not a huge risk of that compared to a world where conservatives are like shuttering anything at all that calls itself news, that says the quiet part out loud. That's a decent argument.
Well, we will find out. And of course, Smartmatic is up next. We'll be watching that one closely.
Can't wait.
Eeny, meeny, chili beany, the spirits are about to speak.
Are they friendly spirits?
Friendly? Just listen.
Okay, that brings us to predictions. Aaron, what do you got for us?
I always hate this because I never feel like I have anything interesting to say. But one thing I'm going to say, and it is absolutely me just dreaming of a future that I want to see, is that I think Fox News might get rid of Tucker Carlson, or that Tucker Carlson might leave Fox News. I think it's coming in the next year or two. They're going to distance it so it, quote, has nothing to do with anything at all that just happened. But the dude is a massive liability for them, and they know it. And I want him to go the way of Bill O'Reilly and Glenn Beck. So fingers crossed. That's my prediction. How about you? What do you got?
My prediction, I'm going to sort of follow up on what I said earlier. I believe that Ro Khanna is going to declare for presidency. I don't think Democrats are going to object too much, because Biden actually benefited from being hit from the left from Bernie Sanders and other candidates. It makes him get to look like a centrist. I think Ro Khanna is basically going to step into Bernie Sanders' place as the standard bearer of it. I mean, I keep saying Bernie Sanders, he's older than Joe Biden, but there's old and there's old. He's still sharp. He's still doing layups in basketball, for crying out loud. So,
and winning debates.
And winning debates. But it may be that he doesn't want to run for president anymore. Ro Khanna may become the standard bearer, but I think he's going to declare himself for president, regardless of what Joe Biden does.
Cool.
And with that, we'll be back next week. Until then, stay informed and stay engaged.